Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to the Temple Institute Parsha class. My name is Gedalia Meyer, and I'm podcasting from Ma'ale Adumim in Israel. It is popular in current times to view life as a random series of events. There is no great plan for the world, and certainly none for individual people. We are simply here as a result of some cosmic explosion billions of years ago, and the subsequent development of everything through the laws of nature. It all happened through an accident, and it will all go up in a cosmic implosion umpteen billions of years in the future, and nobody will have ever known that it existed. This is the standard view of everything from the perspective of modern science. Anybody who considers themselves to be rational and intelligent has to buy into this view. Anybody else is hopelessly antiquated and living in the dark ages. Even though everybody privately regards their own life as precious and of irreplaceable worth, they are uncomfortably aware that this goes against all modern rational thought. Caring about the earth, other people, animals, or the quality of the water is really nothing more than an exercise in futility and wishful thinking. We are all going to die, and everything will go up in smoke. So who really cares? Contrasting this is the religious or spiritual view. This ancient perspective claims that pretty much everything matters in some way. Taken to its fullest extent, it maintains that there is nothing in life that is meaningless. Even seemingly random acts like meteors colliding have some significance, though it is admittedly difficult to comprehend what it might be. Every event in the life of a person is assumed to have some purpose, somehow in the great scheme of things. While this approach certainly stretches the imagination, there is no question that it also serves to inspire us to seek meaning in life. In between both of these is where most people probably find themselves. They think that their own lives matter, as does the history of humanity and perhaps the universe, but realize that most individual acts or things in the world really have no importance whatsoever. They are random events set in motion by cosmic forces of nature for no reason whatsoever. Reconciling these two incompatible outlooks is no easy feat. It entails viewing certain things as due to some divine hand that steers things according to their destined course, and others as meaningless and random. This is a challenging way to view life, but it is the one most of us have chosen, whether we planned it this way or not. When it comes to a foundational text like the Bible, it is clear that it doesn't ascribe to the modern scientific view. There are countless incidents, both involving individuals and nations, that are divinely ordained and granted huge significance. Everything seems to matter in one way or another. On the other hand, there is no shortage of incidents and events that don't seem to matter at all. It is frequently unclear why they were included in the text to begin with. They just happen without any mention of God or any great plan. And then they are forgotten. Even within strictly religious circles, there are many who have no problem with this state of affairs. While they prefer to see everything in the Bible as important, they recognize that some things are just there because they happened and were recorded as such. Are these to be regarded as random and insignificant events, or is there some hidden meaning behind them? Most, but not all, Bible followers would choose the latter. It is simply too difficult to contemplate something in the text that just happens for no reason. This week's Parsha is called Beshalach. That word means in sending. It introduces a verse in which Pharaoh is described as sending off the Israelites to begin the exodus from Egypt. The main intent of the verse is to state that God did not lead them from Egypt to Canaan by the shorter and easier route along the coast of the Mediterranean, but instead directed them to head through the desert towards the southern area of the Sinai Peninsula. The reason for this was that God did not want to take the chance of the Israelites encountering resistance along the way and electing to turn around back to Egypt. They were set on a course in which there would be no way of returning. The Parsha immediately gets into the events surrounding the fateful crossing of the sea, which is certainly the main event. The Israelites are accompanied by a mysterious pillar of cloud by day and an equally mysterious pillar of fire by night. These are clearly manifestations of some divine power. The first half of the Parsha deals with this subject. The lead up to the actual crossing comes about when Pharaoh and his advisors realize that they had made a colossal mistake in allowing the Israelites to leave. They harnessed their war chariots and headed into the wilderness after the Israelites. They overtook them on the shore of the sea. The Israelites knew that they were no match for the Egyptian armory, despite their vastly larger numbers. They issued the first of a series of complaints in this parsha against Moshe for leading them into this hopeless mess. They expressed the familiar demand to return to Egypt, back into servitude. Moshe's response is to encourage them to have faith, for they have God on their side. God then enters the picture and tells Moshe that they should enter the sea despite any obvious path to cross it. This, of course, leads to the miraculous crossing of the sea and the drowning of the Egyptian army which followed them in. The pillar of cloud and fire are there with the Israelites, leading the way through the water and striking the Egyptians. The Israelites proceed on dry land while the Egyptians are stuck in the mud. They ultimately are swallowed by the waters and remembered only in the glorious Song of the Sea, which is the emotional highlight of the parsha. Following this is the beginning of the journeys through the wilderness. The rest of the parsha lists 4 particular events in the initial stages of these journeys. The first is when they encounter waters that are too bitter to drink. After more complaints, Moshe is shown a solution by immersing a certain tree into the waters to make them sweet. This is immediately followed by an encampment at an oasis with food and water. The second event comes about because of a lack of food. After more complaints, Moshe is told by God that a miraculous solution to this problem will be revealed. This is the famous man, or manna from heaven. This manna, whatever it may have been, would sustain the Israelites through their 40 years of wandering in the wilderness. It was gathered daily and had to be eaten quickly. In addition, they were told to not gather it on Shabbat. The third incident again involves a lack of water. The resolution for this comes through God telling Moshe to hit a certain rock, which will bring forth water. Following this is the first actual battle the Israelites face. This comes against the hated tribe of Amalek, who attacked them for no apparent reason. There is a complete victory against this tribe, and Amalek goes down in biblical history as the ultimate enemies of God. Getting back to that first incident, it was a simple solution of bitter waters in the desert. This was to be expected. It was the Sinai desert, and they were a massive group traveling with no provisions. The waters were undrinkable, and there seemed to be no remedy for the situation. This mysterious tree which sweetens the waters solves the immediate problem. It seems like a fairly common and pernicious problem that they would encounter again and again. Would they be so fortunate the next time to have this mysterious tree to sweeten the waters? The conclusion of this relatively minor incident is stated in 2 dramatic verses. Quote, "He cried out to Hashem, who showed him a tree, which he cast into the water and sweetened the waters. There was placed for him a law and a judgment, and there they were tested. He said, if you listen to the voice of Hashem your God and do what is right in God's eyes and abide by God's commandments and keep God's laws, all the sicknesses that I placed upon Egypt, I shall not put upon you, for I am Hashem who heals you." The obvious religious overtones of this statement transform what seemed to be a random event in the desert into a spiritual teaching. The clear message was to follow God's laws, which would lead to salvation from countless problems they would encounter along the journey. This tree was an example of the many ways this could come about, but it is unclear what the meaning of that phrase appearing after the waters are sweetened. Quote, "There was placed for him a law and a judgment." What does this phrase mean? What was this law and judgment? There are traditional answers to this question. They involve biblical laws, but tend to ignore the ending of the phrase, quote, "and there they were tested." How were they tested? Perhaps there is a very simple reading of this phrase that comes straight out of the text. This event was certainly a challenge. If anything, it was a sign of things to come. There would be more of these incidents. They would appear to be random events, ultimately meaningless problems that would have to be overcome in the course of a huge group wandering through the desert. The law and judgment, perhaps, was the new perspective they were required to view events like this within. They could no longer be seen as pointless problems that happened along the way. They would have to be seen as divinely guided. This wasn't a chance tree that Moshe found. It was placed there for a reason. A rock in the desert was not some random boulder. It was placed there to provide water. This was the test and the challenge. Could they actually live like this? Would they be able to see some random tree or rock as something purposely placed in their path by God? Maybe it was just a rock or a tree and they got lucky. Would they see the sprinkling of the manna every morning as the miracle that it was? Or would they become accustomed to it and regard it as nothing greater than the morning dew? This was the law they were required to follow. It was to view things from the perspective of God being intricately involved in their lives. This is the challenge we all face to this very day. We can see things as nothing more than chance events, rocks, trees, meteorites, or we can see them as props placed before us by no less than God, providing subtle hints for us as we go through the challenges of our lives. This is a challenging way of viewing life, and it is no simple path, but it does create a route for the greatest challenge of all, to find meaning and purpose in life. Shabbat Shalom.